Sonoma County's KZST. It is 8:21, Brent Farris Morning Showgram. On the show this morning, we have a guy with the nickname of Boston George. Good morning. Do I call you Boston? Do I call you George? What do I call you?
Boston George is fine.
Boston George. I just love the way that sounds. And next to Boston George, this is Jose. Good morning, Jose.
Hi, good morning, Brent.
The reason you are here is you're going to do a little talk at the Spreckles in when is that, George? Is it the 19th?
It'll be Saturday the 19th.
Saturday 19th, okay. And the reason I ask you in is you have one of the more interesting lives. I don't know if you started it this way, but you ended up as one of the biggest drug dealers in America. Is that correct?
That's correct. I didn't start it that way. I started out with a paper route when I was a kid, and and I was an entrepreneur at that time, and then moved forward in trying to integrate myself into the norm. I went to college, 3 colleges to be exact.
Yeah.
And the last one was Long Beach State in California. And, of course, I didn't even smoke cigarettes at that time. I couldn't inhale, and they had to make a water pipe so I could inhale the marijuana.
So let me get this straight, though. You started, just kind of selling some drugs on the side. Then you get a girlfriend, and you fill her suitcase with drugs from Mexico. Then off to Mexico, and then Johnny Depp is playing you in a movie called Blow. Now, did Depp talk to you a lot to learn about who you were, or he just made this stuff up?
No, it all derived from a book that I wrote called Grazing in the Grass Until the Snow Came.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a journalist who wrote for Rolling Stone named Howard Cohn, and I knew him, and he read the manuscript, and he said, this is fantastic, he said, but it's all in the first person. He said, would you agree to an investigative reporter investigating your story and then rewriting it? And so I agreed to it, and then Howard was pushed out of the project. He was writing a book called The Dirty Secrets of George Bush.
Right.
And so they assigned a man named Bruce Porter, a journalist at Columbia University.
So the big thing goes, this book blows up, goes into a movie. Johnny Depp does it. It's a hugely acclaimed. About 2001 they did this thing. And it's about your life and how you got to be Pablo Escobar's biggest distributor in the United States. Did you make $70 million a day in the 70s?
The company itself, the cartel, was grossing $70 million. I was making like $3 to $5 million a day.
Oh yeah, piddly money. Oh, there's $3 to $5 million a day in the 70s. In the 70s. Now I understand that the Escobar people were making so much money that they spent how much on rubber bands to wrap it?
Oh man, anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 a month just on rubber bands.
And how much did rats eat?
They say that it's estimated $2 billion a year in rat infestations and water damage and whatnot from the places that he was storing.
This is eating the money.
Yeah.
Now in the movie,
literally eating the money.
Okay, in the movie, Depp is in a house and there's so much cash that they're having to throw it out the windows and anything. Was it really like that for you?
The cash became a burden. It was overwhelming trying to count it, and sometimes we'd be $2 million short, and eventually we just reached. Of course, we were snorting cocaine when we were counting.
Well, yeah.
We reached a point where we're like, "Oh, the hell with it," If it's short, we'll just make it up, or who cares anymore?
There was that kind of money,
and we used to weigh it.
Oh my God! You weighed the cash? You didn't count it?
$1 million and $100 bills weighs 20.3 pounds.
See, you're saying these things, and what's popping into my mind is you're a drug dealer.
I was.
Your parents have got to be thrilled with your lifestyle choice. Why are you sitting here and not in jail for the rest of your natural life?
Well, 20 years that I just did is basically your natural life. I mean, I went in at 52, and now I'm 73.
Right.
And 20 years, I can tell you, in the hallways of always wandering, and it's a long time.
We're talking with a guy whose nickname is Boston George. His name is George Young. You're going to be at the Spreckles on Saturday, 6 p.m., and you're going to be doing a talk about this life this crazy life that you've lived. Who were you as a kid?
I was like Richie Cunningham in Happy Days. I grew up in a small town in between Boston and Cape Cod called Weymouth, Massachusetts. And there weren't any drugs. There was no violence. And
how exactly did you get to be the biggest drug dealer in America from Richie Cunningham? That's what interests me.
It all happened by accident. And it's when I think about it all, it somewhat amazes me. And my mother often said, she said, you were a good boy until you went to California with tuna.
Wow. So you think California did you in?
Yeah, more or less.
More or less.
And I'm back again.
Okay. So that's who you were as a kid. Who are you now? I know the prison stuff and I know that, but now you're out of prison. Who are you? Are you Richie older now, or are you the drug dealer guy, or who are you now? They did a movie about your life. Johnny Depp plays it. Who are you now?
Who am I now? I'm an old man who's lived a life 1,000 times over, with the intensity of jet fuel, and I have a lot of wisdom and a multitude of experiences, and sometimes I'll just smile, and it's like wandering aimlessly in a dark forest and eventually seeing the light of the campfire and being able to sit by that fire, and you have a peace within yourself, and I believe that our purpose in life is to experience everything you can possible, and then take those experiences and turn them into wisdom and give back more than you take.
Well, you got a lot of giving to do, man. You've got a lot of giving to do. Hey, we're going to come back in just a couple of minutes. We're talking with Boston George here. They did the movie Blow, starring Johnny Depp, about his life. He's got the book and everything else. Just got out of 20 years in jail for selling drugs. Worked with the Medellin cartel. There's some questions I want to ask you about that and your life, and I'm going to give you a real heavy to think about, okay? I'm going to think about this during the news. I'm sure there's a lot of things that you regret in your life. But what I want you to tell me when we come back is, give me some things about your crazy life that you don't regret. Sonoma County's KZST. Kind of an odd interview this morning. It really is. I've got Jose in. Good morning, Jose.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here. We'll talk to you in just a sec. And I've got George Young, who was the subject of the movie Blow, which was Johnny Depp, the movie of this kid, Richie Cunningham in a Happy Day Life, who slowly, bit by bit, comes to California, starts selling marijuana, ups it a little bit, gets a plane. The next thing you know, you're flying back and forth. You're working with a Medellin drug cartel. You and Escobar are buds. And it just keeps going and bigger and bigger and bigger. At its peak, George, what was that like? Did you even know, were you that blasted out of your brain, or did you actually know what was going on?
No, I was never blasted out of my brain, because there's one major rule in the drug business, and if you deal drugs or smuggle drugs, you don't do drugs.
Huh.
And if you do, you don't last very long. And with Escobar, that was one of his main rules, and he would say, I don't want you coming back to me and telling me the load went to hell, or you lost the money, or you lost the load,
right?
And because you were stoned. And he said, then I'll have to exterminate you. And he said, this isn't like the movies where you can't walk away. He said, if you want to do drugs, that's your choice, walk away. And
wow,
I mean, it was a very serious business.
What don't you regret? And that's a question I'm curious about, because everybody says, and I know your regrets are plenty.
No, I don't have any regrets.
Really?
No.
You would say, I would do this crazy life again.
But you can't look back and have regrets. You only have to live in the present and look to the future. And because what are regrets worth?
Do you think about the people whose lives you helped damage?
Like, there are more people that die from sugar in the world, from diabetes and automobile accidents, and like, which isn't even comparable. I mean, nobody forced the cocaine on anybody. Nobody held a gun at anyone's head. And at the time I was selling it was $60,000 a kilo on the street. And the only people that could afford that were people in the entertainment industry, the music industry, and Wall Street. And I mean, Johnny Carson used to joke on the Tonight Show about cocaine. Comedians made jokes about it. Woody Allen made a movie about it, and like, Studio 54 was packed every night, and the bathrooms were packed.
Wow.
Okay, and like, nobody is forcing drugs on anybody.
We were talking
And at that time. I'll give you that, because nobody knew really what cocaine was all about. Okay, and cocaine is not a physically addictive high; it's a mentally addictive high.
Well, George, let me. For those just tuning in, I'm talking to George Young, known as Boston George, who's in, that did the movie Blow about your life with Johnny Depp, which is, you know, everybody wants to know the Hollywood side. I'm more interested in the reality of it all. You actually stunned me with that answer. You did. I thought you were going to have regrets and have some things you weren't regretful, but you don't regret any of it.
See, I'm, I guess you'd call me an impresario of the unorthodox, okay?
Wow.
And I just could never have done the things that I did if I had regrets.
Now, they're about to make your life into another movie, HBO. Is that correct, Jose?
Possibly, yeah. We're in deals now to hopefully do it. It's not a movie. It would be a scripted series.
It's like all the series that
it would take
Mad
place
Men
in the
and all that.
60s, yeah, in the 70s.
Wow.
Kind of like an entourage type thing that, you know, Hollywood actors, main
Right.
A-list actors would
Right.
play out some of the stories of, not some of the stories, but most of the stories that George has from the 60s and 70s.
Right.
So, yeah.
So if you were back, George, if you were back in jail, well, I know you're out. You're on probation, right? How
Right.
long was your sentence?
It's 20 years and 8 years supervised release.
So 28 years total, supervisor.
Right.
So, and I know you would not sell drugs now because of that part of it, but would you sell drugs again?
No, that was a game that I played, and you know, now it's time to move forward with other things. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, and that selling drugs again would be completely. I wouldn't have any comprehension of what goes on today in the drug business, and plus I have no desire to do it.
Did you keep any of that money? I mean, you were making millions of dollars a day.
I refuse to answer on the grounds it might incriminate me.
Well, here's the deal. Jose, we'll tell everybody where George is going to be, because I'm kind of running out of time here. I've got a zillion more questions. Let me ask this one. So you're watching the movie, right? Yeah, I'm sure you watched the movie Blow.
I haven't seen the whole movie.
Get out.
No.
You're kidding.
No.
There's a movie, major motion picture, Johnny Depp stars in it. It got awards, and you haven't seen it?
I've watched certain parts of it.
I mean, they never played it? You had 20 years in jail
I
to
could
watch
see it. And they played it in jail, and, you know, the kids in jail would come, it's on, your movie's on, come see it. And,
Wow.
but I've seen the parts that I wanted to see, okay? And like Ted Demme, the director, he told me, he said, you're one of the very few people on this planet who now has his own time machine.
Wow. Jose, give me all the details on what he's got coming up.
Yeah, Saturday the 19th, this Saturday, 6 p.m. at the Spreckles Performing Arts Center in Rohnert Park, California. He's doing a intimate question and answer, so more of these types of questions, as well as, you know, whatever people want to know about his life. He's going to be there answering questions, and it's going to be a real nice, intimate night.
Wow. How much is it to get in?
It's $25 to get in.
Yeah.
And first come first serve with the preferred seating. It's basically a nice intimate spot. There's only 500 seats, so it's very intimate. It's not going to be like this big arena. It's a nice little room.
George, you really surprised me in your honesty. There's no regrets in your life.
No.
No regrets. You have a life lived that everybody else looks at. You're a very interesting individual.
Well, thank you. You're a scintillating conversationalist yourself.
Okay, I have one final question. In the movie, we're going to go back to the movie, and I know you haven't seen it all. They have this one scene where Depp is walking through Mexico trying to find the Medellin drug cartel to get in touch. You did that.
Right.
Did you really wander down the street and say to total strangers, "Donde está el weed"?
The best we could, and my buddies from UMass were with me, and we were making good money buying pot in California and just transporting it to Massachusetts, selling it to the colleges. And I convinced them, let's go down to Mexico and get our own pot, because I was more than an entrepreneur. I loved the adventure of it. And so we were down there for a week, and we couldn't find any, all right? And every night we'd be sitting at the bar, and my friends started to look at me like, come on, man, like, what a stupid idea this is. And suddenly this little yellow Volkswagen pulled up, and the door was open in the Mexican bar, and the street wasn't that far away from the tables, and out got this little blonde, and she came right to the table, and she said, I'm Linda, and she said, you know what? You guys have asked just about everybody in this town except the police chief for pot. And she said, you're ridiculous. She said, I happen to live with one of the biggest pot suppliers in this area, and she said, I'm going to take you there to meet him tonight to save you guys. And of course, you know, my ego rose up about 1,000 points, and I looked at those guys and I said, I told you this would work.
8:52, KZST. George, thank you for being here. Jose,
Thank
you for
you.
being here.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Unbelievable. The tale of a real life. We're not making this stuff up. Be back in a minute.